It is Tuesday night, East Lansing, Michigan. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag. Come on in, gather around, gather around, gather around. We're going to talk Michigan State sports all night and have a good time with it. Well, at least an hour, hour and a half, something like that. I always say it's going to be an hour and a half or something like that. It goes 3 hours. Sometimes there's rain delays. Sometimes there's people running on the field. We have to get security out there to usher them off. Sometimes we have replays that take forever. And, of course, the commercial breaks. Well, there are no commercial breaks when it's live. Maybe it won't be 3 hours, maybe 2 hours. But things to talk about, Michigan State football. No postseason this year. You guys know that. So Michigan State trying to take the next steps as a program, coming off that loss to Penn State to end the season. And, of course, the terrible loss to Indiana, which cost Michigan State a postseason bid, a bowl bid, bowl practices, all that stuff. Michigan State coaches out on the road recruiting right now. They had 3 visitors in last week, and I think 3 or 4 this weekend, and those numbers are still going to add up. Mel Tucker's been in Georgia, Texas. They've set foot in California, where we've been tracking that all over the country. Jason Killip doing a great job recruiting. He's the recruiting anchor for SpartanMag. We really appreciate the work that he does. Noah Sprunger, great job as an intern. Jake Laskowa, great job, intern, SpartanMag. And, of course, the incomparable on lead guitar, Paul Konerdijk, associate editor, SpartanMag. We got to get Rico Cooney involved a little bit. Matt Dorsey's kind of hanging around. Dorsey's going to come in out of the bullpen with some sage observations on things. That'll be happening real soon as we continue to evolve over at SpartanMag. We appreciate everybody making the migration over there. We're part of On3, the on3.com network right now. We've got a couple of questions that'll come in mailbag style that ask about that a little bit, and we look forward to talking about that. And we appreciate all the SpartanMaggers that have come over from where we were previously. And we've got a lot of respect from for the people where we were recently and for 20 years. Got a lot of friends over there, a lot of good people over there. They're doing a great job. We want to do a great job. Everybody wants to do a great job covering Michigan State and college football for the college football fans that are out there. And those of you that have been following SpartanMag for years and years and years know the standard that we set. We do things a little bit differently. Some people really like it. We try real hard. Eventually, we want to be all things to all people in one way or another. You may have seen over at SpartanMag, we're coming a little bit harder with quick news, trying to really have a handle on the news throughout the day and then follow up with some analysis. And, of course, you always have the post-game analysis. SpartanMag VCast with Konendijk. Paul Konendijk doing a great job with his 3 takes, is the 3 and out after basketball games and 3 things to watch before a game. He's got one over there at SpartanMag right now talking about Michigan State versus Penn State on Wednesday night. It's going to be a tough one. Penn State, what do they start? Izzo says it's 5 fifth-year seniors. I'd have to check his math on that. Sometimes Izzo will amplify the stats to prove his point or to support his point. But the point is, Penn State has some transfers. They've got some veterans. By the time you watch this, that game might be over. But Konerdijk and I will be talking about that as we head into the week. Big visit weekend coming up. We appreciate everybody checking in right here to talk some Spartan football, Spartan basketball. We'll go right to the questions. We're going to have Jason Killip on a little bit later to talk about Michigan State's recruiting weekend and what took place last week as Michigan State moves forward with the recruiting class. By my count, they might have about 8 or 9 slots left, but as more people go into the portal, that increases the slots. That's how that works. As far as news today, Jarek Broussard, Michigan State running back, declared for the NFL draft. You're seeing a lot of Michigan State players declare for the draft, including players that don't have any eligibility left. I've been asked what that means when you've got players like, I don't know, was it Kendall Brooks, Jarrett Horst? There have been some others. Matt Carrick declares for the NFL draft. Matt Carrick played 6 years at Michigan State. Did a good job, did as much as he could this year. And that surgically repaired right knee eventually retweaked it. I'm not sure, honestly, I'm not sure if it was a recurring injury that forced him to miss the last couple of weeks. Gino Vandermark came in as a redshirt freshman, played right guard and did better as he went along, got some valuable reps. That's where missing the bowl game kind of hurts more. It'd be good to have Vandermark get some bowl practices. Brandon Baldwin a little bit more, although Brandon Baldwin started the last 4 or 5 games of the year. But Wigginton, Brandon Miller, some of those young offensive linemen, if they would had bowl practices, that certainly would have helped. But that's not going to happen. As far as Michigan State goes, with some of those players declaring for the NFL draft, I think that's just to get stuff out on social media to make it look good for recruiting, because it's all about recruiting right now. And as the coaches are out on the recruiting trail, they want some of the recruits to see, there's some Michigan State players declaring for the draft. Now, you and I know that Jarek Broussard probably came to Michigan State hoping to be one and done and go. He is going to be one and done. Played 1 year, ended up falling down to 3rd string, ended up behind Elijah Collins and Jalen Berger, And Broussard, what do you have, about 300 yards rushing this year? Looked pretty good at the beginning, and then kind of, I don't know if he wore down, but started to lose some of that zest as the season went along. He declares for the draft, so you wish him well, but a guy, a little bit he's a little dude with some decent moves, but when Michigan State got him out of the transfer portal, I said that he looks okay. He's got some moves, got some vision, does not really have that home run next gear power. Even when he was at Colorado and rushed for over 300 yards against Arizona, he might have rushed for over 300 yards on 2 occasions. Offensive Player of the Year in the Pac-12 back in 2020 because of the stats that he put up. But even with some of those, he had some real long runs when he rushes for 300. But even on those, he didn't really have that breakaway next gear, pull away home run speed. Not all running backs do. That certainly is a difference maker if you have that. And for being Offensive Player of the Year in the Pac-12, you would expect him to possibly have that. He didn't, and he was limited. He was pretty good, did some things, worked his best. I mentioned before when he was on his way in that he might not be the most durable guy, and I'd heard that from some intel from his Colorado days, and that certainly turned out to be maybe some of what happened there. But Broussard goes on, and that, Michigan State, I've got a story over at SpartanMag about the Michigan State running back room now that Broussard is out. What does it look like next year? Well, you got Berger coming back. You might have Elijah Collins coming back for a 6th year. He told Ricardo Cooney, who's a senior writer for SpartanMag, during interviews just before senior day, Elijah Collins said, yeah, he's planning to come back. He didn't say it at the podium in front of all the reporters, but he told Ricardo Cooney that. And I suspect that's still his plan, but he couldn't come out and announce that because you need to be invited by the program, and that hadn't quite happened yet. Same thing with Aaron Brule. When I talked to him prior to senior day, he was talking about that he was leaning toward coming back, wanted to come back. But he was, actually that was before the Rutgers game. But he wasn't saying for sure because, first of all, you have to be invited back. Secondly, he just had a couple of good games. And if he had gone out and had 3 sacks against Rutgers, 3 sacks against Indiana, 3 sacks in a bowl game, he might all of a sudden become a draftable player. So he wasn't ready to say he was coming back for sure. He thought that was going to happen. But I expect Aaron Brule to come back. And we're kind of hearing a little bit, just whispers around the chicken coop a little bit that Jacoby Windman, it's not a done deal that he's going to be heading off. Had a very good start of the season. Middle of the season was by the 3rd or 4th game at defensive end, his productivity started to taper off a little bit as some film got out on him and opponents became more wise to his moves and so forth. Then Michigan State moved him to middle linebacker out of necessity due to injuries and other things. They just needed someone better than Van Sumeren. And Windman did give Michigan State a better defense against Wisconsin. He was key in that victory. He was not there for the Illinois game because by that time he was suspended. So apparently he may not want to have his college career end with that suspension. There's some whispers he might be wanting to come back. That's not official. He's not announced that yet, but that's one of the things I'm hearing. Right now, Michigan State, by my count, has 65 players in the program that are on scholarship. That includes some of the seniors who have not yet made their decisions public, like Windman and Brule and some of those guys that are still deciding. So if you have 65 scholarships, that's room for 20 in your recruiting class to get up to 85. I think Michigan State has 12 commitments right now, so that's 77, which leaves them with 8 scholarship slots remaining. They've got 12 commitments, 8 more will give them 20. Mel Tucker told me a couple weeks ago they want to have a full class of 25. So you can do the math on that. I'm expecting 5 more guys to move on one way or another. Excuse me while I kiss the sky. Sorry about that. I need to do that because, as you know, a couple weeks ago, lost my voice, had to cancel a SpartanMag Live. I've got it on in this thermos, which keeps it warm, which I like, but I took the lid off because it's too hard to drink. I apologize about that, but I need to keep my voice together. That'll help a little bit. Now, if this were a real show, we'd go to commercial. You guys wouldn't have to deal with that, but that's the best we can do. It's kind of like Gilligan's Island here. We're primitive. Primitive as can be, and we're excited about it. SpartanMag. We're going to have Jason Killip in a little bit later to talk some recruiting. All right, let's go to the mailbag right away. And I guess it's not right away because I just had a little soliloquy that went on a little too long. But question number 1, Solo from Westland, Michigan says, I saw your Isaiah Johnson thread that was over at SpartanMag Underground Bunker message board. And go over to SpartanMag Underground Bunker. That's where these questions were posted. The Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag. It is the church of what's happening now for Michigan State sports. The daily narrative. That's where all the Michigan State fans, the smart ones, the good ones, they're not always the most well-behaved, but the most talented guys. They're thoroughbreds. They're always in the starting gate ready to go over at Underground Bunker. I invite those maggers over there, the maggers, as we affectionately call them. They're the subscribers, SpartanMag. They're the ones that make it run. We appreciate those people, many of which are here tonight watching. Anyway, I invite those Spartan Maggers to pose questions, mailbag style. We will entertain those questions here during Spartan Mag Live. So Sola from Westland, Michigan has a question, the first one posted. And over at the Underground Bunker message board last night, I watched some film of Isaiah Johnson, 6'2" wide receiver from Richmond, Virginia, Thomas Jefferson High School. He is a sleeper, a rising sleeper. And Michigan State is in on some sleepers. It's not always the best sign to do that at the 11th hour, but in some ways I think it's good that Michigan State is turning over some rocks and doing a lot in the evaluation piece. Back in the summer, they're going after 4 and 5 stars and got some. That's why their class is ranked number 21 in the country right now by On3. But it's kind of died off since then, and Michigan State did not have a very good season. Had some controversies along the way. You're all aware of those. Not the best thing for recruiting. So I'm not surprised that Michigan State has had to circle back for 3 stars. And for Michigan State to do well, evaluation has to be a big part of it. And Mel Tucker came to Michigan State and had big intentions, big ambitions of going out and getting 4 and 5 star recruits and putting together the type of roster that you've seen that he's been a part of at Georgia and Alabama. Before they can get there, and they need to win games. Yeah, they won games 2 years ago, went 10-2, 11-2, whatever it was. That's part of the reason they got a lot of good talent to come in during the summer. In this day and age, get them on campus, that's great. Establishing some relationships, that's great. But at some point, what's the NIL look like? And, there's Michigan State's competitive with NIL. Some others are hard to beat in that area. If you're going to pry some players out of Georgia and Florida, some 4 stars, be real. You're going to have to pay them more. Because why would they go a long way from home unless the relationships are really great? So that's kind of where Michigan State is on those things, and they'll get back at it again next spring and summer. In the meantime, getting after this class, trying to finish it up. And I'm not surprised they're having to circle back to some 3 stars. And, there were some accusations that Michigan State was kind of recruiting out of a book. I don't think Tucker believes in that, but some people around Michigan State, are they just going after 4 stars and only 4 stars? When in actuality, there might be a 3-star right in front of them that they need to evaluate and go after. I've mentioned many times that at Michigan State's football camp, Michigan State never would have gotten Benny Fowler or Trey Waynes if those guys hadn't shown up at camp and just showed out. And Michigan State didn't know anything about those guys. Keyshawn Martin, NFL player. That film came in December, like a month and a half before signing day. Michigan State, Dan Enos and those guys looked at it. They're like, this guy, stop the presses. We got to look at this guy, take it straight to D'Antonio. They offered him. Keyshawn Martin became an NFL player. But he's a guy that didn't really have junior film much and then played some quarterback. You know what happened with Keyshawn Martin. This guy, Isaiah Johnson from Virginia, his film reminds me a little bit of Keyshawn Martin. It's like, where did this guy come from? What did his junior film look like? Why did this guy not have a bunch of offers back in August? But offers started coming in. Now he has offers from North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, and Duke. But Michigan State got in there kind of early, and he visited Michigan State last week. We'll talk to Jason Kilp about that here in a few minutes. He liked the visit, and Michigan State's in good shape with this guy. So Sola from Westland is referencing a post that I made on the Underground Bunker message board last night when I was talking about Isaiah Johnson. And the guy reminds me, who did I say he reminded me of? The guy at Pittsburgh that won the Biletnikoff last year. I forget his name. He's at USC now. Jordan Addison. Reminds me of Jordan Addison, maybe an inch taller. But Jordan Addison's smooth and the acceleration, and plus Johnson has great hands, great leaping ability. And you watch him at corner, he's got some toughness to him. We got some film of him. We'll show it a little bit later. But the question from Sola from Westland, Michigan says he saw my Isaiah Johnson thread, which was really encouraging. He says, do you have any other insights concerning Michigan State recruiting targets or current commits that can give fans hope for a strong finish to this class? Thanks, Bruce Cameron Addison. First of all, the players that Michigan State has. Stanton Ramil, the offensive lineman from Alabaster, Alabama, 4-star. That guy, Michigan State was after him for a while. I think he was a 3-star by some people. He's 4-star now. Big, square-bodied, 6'6", athletic, well-proportioned guy. You watch him play. I was watching. They won their state title. I think the 4th straight 7A state title for Alabaster Thompson High School. And Stanton Ramil, I think, is what you're looking for in an offensive line prospect. So just because Michigan State got him a few months ago, don't underappreciate the addition that he is to this class. He committed to Michigan State over, Tennessee, I think Penn State maybe. He's a nice one. I think Michigan State's got a good chance to reel in Johnson, who's risen up to number 20 in the state of Virginia by On3. As far as others, I'm still doing research on some of the people that have visited last week and will be visiting this weekend. So I'm still getting, hot and heavy into that stuff. And, as far as defense goes, the defensive tackle from Texas A&M, transfer portal visiting this weekend. He could be a really big addition to the talent pool there in the defensive interior. Let me go ahead. I've got to send out a tweet to let people know this is going on. Appreciate everybody's patience. Make sure to give us a like here at the Spartan Mag channel, and also go to Spartan Mag and become a Spartan Magger. We always appreciate those. And also subscribe to the channel here. We need that. We're inching up towards 7,000. Wanted to have 7,000 by Thanksgiving. Not going to happen. If we get 7,000 by January 1st, I'm sorry. Yeah, 7,000. That'd make me a happy man, if anyone's curious. Let's see what we got here. We are live. Spartan Mag live. All right, what do we have here? Thanks for that like. We just saw a like come in. If we get some more of those, that's always outstanding. Going to find the link here. Appreciate everybody hanging out with me while I should have had a question going while I did this. That's what I usually do. So we try to do 2 things at once. There's that. Appreciate everybody's patience, and almost done. There it is. All right. So we invite people to post questions over in the comments area, and we will get to those questions as we move along. Now, let's see what we have over here in the comments area. Over in the comments area, please feel free to do that. All right, Zach Colmoden, he's in. He says, "Hey, Comp here from South Bend, Indiana." Clark Merrier, is it? We talked about this with Clark before. Is it Merrier or Merrier? I think he said it's Merrier. That's what we're going to call him. He says, "Good evening. Make the best of what's still around" is here. He puts in number 1, but he's actually number 3. Spartan MD says, "Gentlemen and Spartans." It's good to have Spartan MD here in case anybody needs any medical attention. K for Kawhi says, "Go Green." So that's our starting 5. We've not had that starting 5 before. K for Kawhi, he's going to be positionless 3. Is that an oxymoron? He's a face-up positionless player. Zach Comolden, he's running the point. Clark Merrier, stretch 4. Make the best of what's still around. He's down low. He's the 5 Spartan MD. He's a sweet shooting 2 guard like John Long. You guys remember John Long? Anyway, Gordon Tonona, he's here, 6th man. Anmo Namanavori, I think that's what that says. "Hey, Comp, hope you're doing well." Jeremy Heinonen says, Cannonsburg here. You mean Cannonsburg out in West Michigan? I've never been there. Conerdike's been there a couple times. Rob South says, "What's up, fellas?" Zach Comolden, with his second post of the night, says, "What a crazy portal cycle. With this knowledge, should we be getting excited about Mel Tucker's affinity to pull high-value targets from the portal?" Good question. Well, last year they went out and got Jalen Berger and Jarek Broussard. They were 2 of the best running backs in the portal. That was off the heels of the Kenneth Walker success. Berger was pretty good this year. Broussard kind of okay. But the best running back in the portal last year was Jahmyr Gibbs from Georgia Tech, who went to Alabama and had a good season. But across the country, in terms of portal running backs, there are no Kenneth Walkers, and there's usually not going to be a Kenneth Walker. Now, quarterbacks, they move all over the place. But you know how quarterbacks are. I don't want to speak out of turn here a little bit, but they're divas. Everybody knows that. They don't like to sit and wait. Was it JT Daniels announced he's leaving West Virginia now? He's going to a fourth school. I thought there were rules against that. You couldn't have more than one or two transfers. I guess there are no rules anymore. Goes from USC to Georgia, doesn't win the job there. Goes to Pittsburgh. I don't know what he didn't like about Pittsburgh, but now he's going. Wait, did he go to West Virginia? I've lost track. He went to West Virginia. Slovis went from USC to Pittsburgh, right? Anyway, this defensive tackle that's coming to visit this weekend was a big-time recruit. Played the first 2 games of the year at Texas A&M, became injured, missed the rest of the season. Now, he redshirted the year before also. He's a national top 250 guy. I think Rivals.com had him as a 5-star. That's a big-time guy in the portal. It's my understanding people at Texas A&M were surprised and a little disappointed that he went into the portal. So that's a big-timer. So how much will Michigan State be digging into the portal this year? They're looking at some offensive linemen in case the right guy comes around. Would not shock me if an offensive lineman gets thrown into the fray. But I don't see 15 members of the portal like 2 years ago when they were trying to flip the roster. Tucker wants to build this. In my conversations with him, what I gather is he wants to go back to more slowly getting it going primarily with high school recruiting. Now, most programs around the country will supplement some portal guys in here and there. You know, Michigan went out, got a defensive end and a center, and it made a big impact with the center, certainly. Clemson didn't get anybody from the portal. They're getting a little criticism for that. Georgia didn't get anyone out of the portal on defense. Those are the best programs. Especially, Clemson was riding high for a long time. But, Alabama's been doing some transfers for years. Michigan State, don't look for them to get 15 or 20 of them. 3 or 4 or 5 is what I'm expecting. Like I said, the scholarship numbers are tight. Right now they've got room for, 8 more. I'm expecting a little more room as more players leave. But I would, they've got a good reputation in the portal. That's going to help. Let's go back to the mailbag. Freeland Spartan from Freeland, Michigan says, can you clarify your assessment of Kedrick Riscano's film? Around the time of his decommitment, you and Nils made some comments about him possibly being maxed out as a recruit. Sorry if those were not your exact words, but it was something like that. I'm curious what your take is on him, on his film after his senior year. Kedrick Riscano. I've heard it pronounced Risano, like the C is silent. I've not spoken with him, but I saw some broadcasters in the Houston area that referred to him as Risano. Anyway, big-time recruit rankings-wise, 5'10", 190 out of New Caney, Texas, ranked the number 172 player in the country by the On3 consensus, number 103 in the nation by On3.com themselves. On3.com has Kedrick Risano ranked the number 5 running back in the country. He averaged over 7 yards a carry, nearly 130 yards rushing a game, 36 touchdowns, over 1,800 yards rushing, 31 rushing touchdowns, 249 receiving yards. Risano, when I look at him, the thing that he has that's great is balance. You see his highlight film, and he takes some shots, and he just has great balance. His top-end speed is just okay. When he gets into the open, he just doesn't just leave people, which you would like to see, which, frankly, I would expect out of somebody ranked the number 5 running back in the country. So his top-end speed is just kind of okay. So the home run speed is not elite. So the home run speed is just okay, but Cedric Irvin just had okay home run speed. If you remember Cedric Irvin back in 1995-96 at Michigan State, he was the first cornerstone recruit of the Nick Saban era at Michigan State. He was a 4-star guy from Miami. But Cedric Irvin had some strength and great agility, great change of direction and make you miss. That's something Kedrick Riscano is going to need at the college level to live up to those rankings. His film shows some of that, not as much as Irvin had. I'm not saying he does not possess it. I'm saying he needs to. That's something he's going to need to possess or polish when he gets to college. I think he looks pretty good. But, when Nils said he's maxed out, he means like in Texas, a lot of players, the programs are so good and the weight room and training is so good and sophisticated that some players max out early, whereas players, some players have a high ceiling when they arrive. So those weren't my words about maxed out. Those were Nils's words. But I think I see what he's talking about in terms of maybe not having that next level athleticism. So that's kind of what that's all about. But Michigan State's still recruiting him. They met with him today. Ephraim Reed, the running backs coach at Michigan State, my understanding was going to meet with him today. Now, he committed to Michigan State, was it last January? Then he decommitted in October. He's taking visits to Ole Miss. Was it Penn State? Let me see here. Check my notes. I used to be able to remember this stuff off the top of my head. Yeah, I don't have it. I could look it up. I don't. Anyway, he's. People were thinking Ole Miss was going to be the leader for him, but Michigan State is back in there. Michigan State has smoothed over some things also. So Michigan State's got a foot in the door again there, and they're trying to make headway with Riscano again. He visited Michigan State, I think, in June. And I don't know if he'll be coming back or not. I'm not sure what the rules are on that. If you visit in June, can you visit again? There's some wacky rules like that. Maybe Killup will know.
Call from
Jason Killup.
To accept, press 1.
All right, let's bring in SpartanMag recruiting anchor Jason Killup. He's been doing a great job writing the nightly recruiting report briefing, the nightly recruiting briefing over at SpartanMag and other articles, sitting on some possible scoops coming through at SpartanMag. If you're watching this live, maybe some scoops could be happening. If you're watching the recording, maybe it's already happened. Go over to SpartanMag, check it out over there. Jason, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, Jim. How are you?
Good. I think we're both tired. We've been working a lot lately. For Michigan State not playing football games anymore, you'd think things would let up a little bit, but no. With us changing to the new platform over at On3, we're getting into a different cadence, a different rhythm, and we're working really hard. And we appreciate everybody that's come over there, all the maggers that have migrated over to SpartanMag, and we're trying to really, earn everybody's trust and really get after it with some coverage that Michigan State fans deserve. Now, Jason, you're doing a great job. I was going to ask you about Kedrick Riscano. I was trying to think where he's visited. He visited Ole Miss. Did he visit Penn State and South Carolina too, or something like that? I'm drawing a blank on where else he's visited. What are your thoughts about Kedrick Riscano right now, the running back from New Caney, Texas?
He visited Oklahoma State along with Ole Miss, and he'll be heading to Penn State this weekend.
Okay.
Oklahoma State's another school that he's had long relationships with. I want to say they offered before Michigan State, but Michigan State and Oklahoma State were two of his first offers that he really liked, and Oklahoma State has been in his recruitment for a long time. I wouldn't say they're nearly as big of a factor as Ole Miss. Ole Miss is the biggest factor in his recruitment. Michigan State feels that they have a chance, obviously, sending Ephraim Reed down, and Mel Tucker is going to be in home next week. Usually it's hard to get a kid to recommit after he decommits, but with having a couple months to think about it, maybe Reese Cano comes back in the fold after meeting with the coaches these next couple weeks. The Penn State visit will be interesting. I think that Ephraim Reed coming this week and Mel Tucker coming next week is strategic in case Penn State knocks it out the park with their visit. Mel Tucker will be able to come back in next week and just remind Reese Cano, who's been a constant in that recruitment. I think that's kind of their sales pitch. But we'll have to see. It'll be an interesting turn of events with Michigan State, Penn State, and Ole Miss being involved.
It's interesting that Michigan State has gotten back in there. Like you said, it's hard to get someone to recommit after they decommitted once. But Michigan State is sure of themselves, went back in, smoothed some things over, and It's really it's interesting that they've gotten back in there. I certainly didn't expect that. Are you surprised by that as well?
Yeah, I am. I think that the love for the program and Mel Tucker specifically has always been there for Reese Cano and his family. So that part doesn't totally surprise me. But I thought that by now he would be committed to Ole Miss once he first decommitted from Michigan State. That seemed where things were going. And I thought after he visited there, I believe he visited there twice. And I expected that he'd be a part of their class by now, especially with Lane Kiffin staying put. It's interesting that he's still uncommitted and he's going to even take a visit to Penn State, which kind of seems like a new school in his recruitment. I'm not sure how long they've been involved or if they're just swooping in here at the end, but he seems to be kind of open to taking new suitors even at this point, which is interesting.
All right, so last weekend Michigan State had, 3 official visitors, 3 wide receivers, if I'm not mistaken. Isaiah Johnson is a guy I've already spoken about tonight from Richmond, Virginia. I think Jalen Smith, 6'2", 190 from Houston, Kane. And Eric Singleton, 5'10", 165 from Douglasville, Georgia. And he's committed to Western Kentucky right now. Michigan State trying to get in there a little bit. They've shaken it loose. Am I right? 3 receivers last weekend, is that right?
Yep.
And what's your big takeaway from those 3? First of all, it's interesting that Michigan State, we saw this last year and in previous years with Mel Tucker, a lot of times Michigan State seems to bring in players, all at the same position in one weekend. I don't know if that's probably a strategy going back to Kirby Smart and Nick Saban, but if you come in with a bunch of people that are your same position and you're all loving it there, then you start realizing, man, they've only got one slot for us 3, so somebody's going to have to make a decision. Otherwise, you lose your chair in the musical chairs game. I assume that's part of what they're doing with that. But your thoughts about those 3 receivers? To me, Isaiah Johnson, I think he's really impressive. And I mentioned on the message board last night that I think he's a 4-star talent. And I said the same thing about another guy that Michigan State got out of Virginia, wide receiver a few years ago, Felton Davis. I said, Felton Davis, that's a 4-star talent. He was listed as a 3-star, but you saw his college career. He had a 4-star college career, and I think he would have played in the NFL if he hadn't gotten injured late in his career. Now, Isaiah Johnson is not a Felton Davis type of receiver. I'm just talking he's an underrated. Now he's a 3-star by some people, but he's still unranked by others. But Isaiah Johnson, I'm pretty impressed with him. You've spoken with Isaiah Johnson. What can you tell us about him and his recruitment?
Michigan State did a really good job with his official visit. He was knocked out of the park, and he gave some really glowing quotes. We had an article about that. And it even got to the point where some people might have saw on Instagram today, he had a commitment countdown clock, which he ended up delaying, and we reported at SpartanMag.com that his official visit his commitment date will come on December 21st. He's going to announce that at his school. He has a ceremony planned with media attending, and he didn't want to mess up those plans. But Michigan State did a great job with his recruitment on an official visit. He is not going to take any more visits. Courtney Hawkins visited him at his school yesterday, and they went out to dinner afterwards as an in-home visit type of deal. And Johnson had basketball practice, and Hawkins got to watch him practice. And then as for the other wide receiver, Jalen Smith, I caught up with him tonight. We were supposed to do an interview last night, but he had practice himself, and TJ Fleck and wide receivers coach from Minnesota, I'm blanking on his name, was there. Minnesota's pushing hard, and they're going to have an official visit with Smith this upcoming weekend. Michigan State did a good job on that official visit, and Courtney Hawkins will be at his school tomorrow. So those are the two of the 3 wide receivers that visited that we've been able to catch up with. The third is Eric Singleton out of Georgia. He's listed at 5'9". He's a speedy wide receiver. We haven't been able to get in touch with him after his visit, but he's currently committed to Western Kentucky. His other offers are West Virginia and Minnesota. With Courtney Hawkins visiting Smith and Johnson this week, we can expect that he's probably visiting Singleton as well. and Michigan State will probably take one or two of the wide receivers, not all three. So we'll have to see how those dominoes shake out.
You got a favorite among those three? Mine is Johnson.
Mine as well, and I believe that is the way Michigan State sees it, but I can't confirm that.
Sure. Jalen Smith, 6'2", 190, Houston Kane High School, 25 touchdowns this year, district player of the year. You spoke with him earlier tonight, correct?
Yeah, and he and Johnson have a similar story where they both started playing wide receiver last year. Last fall was both of their first seasons playing wide receiver, which is just an interesting note for both of them and kind of explains why their recruitment didn't take off until their senior years.
And Isaiah Johnson is very good at the corner position. Was he exclusively on defense prior? And what position did Jalen Smith play prior?
I'm not sure on Smith, but Johnson was a defensive back and a running back. He played running back all of his youth years.
Wow.
And then I believe he played defensive back as a freshman and sophomore before picking up wide receiver.
And you can see that Johnson is a former running back because his ability to run after the catch is excellent. And that's what reminds me of the Addison kid a little bit from USC that won the Biletnikoff last year at Pittsburgh. The run after the catch is outstanding with him. And great hands, too. And you see great hands at the corner position with him, going up making one-handed interceptions. I think he's a legit corner and a legit wide receiver at the Big Ten level. And if he plays corner at the college level, he'll have the best hands of any defensive back in his conference at the college level, I would say. But wide receiver, I think he's got a chance to be quite good. He's an excellent prospect. You know, he's got a little bit of Jaden Reed in him also, a little bit, I would say. Amazing that he had no scholarship offers prior to this fall. When you've spoken with Isaiah Johnson, is he surprised that the scholarship offers have rolled in late from Michigan State, North Carolina, South Carolina, those type of schools? Is he excited about it? He's got to be excited.
Yeah, it is. It was a little bit refreshing talking to him and just kind of hearing him with excitement about these schools. And he mentioned Le'Veon Bell as being his all-time favorite player, and when he was a youth running back in the youth leagues, that's who he really looked up to. And he said that he was just proud of being able to accomplish what Le'Veon Bell accomplished and receiving a Michigan State offer. And just, he had a lot of excitement, just even talking about Mel Tucker and Courtney Hawkins. He just was very excited.
All right, so Isaiah Johnson, now we thought there's a chance he might be making a decision, in the last few days, maybe later this week. But you say he's going to wait till signing day, December 21st. But in the meantime, he's not taking any more official visits. So that sounds good to Michigan State. But I've always said you don't want to be the leader for that long. 3 weeks is amplified at this time of year. If you're Michigan State, you'd like to just get it done and over with. But I'd be nervous if I were Michigan State if all of a sudden he announces he's going to visit North Carolina too. So what may have looked a day or two ago like Michigan State was in really good shape, and maybe in terms of silent indications, maybe they do still feel good about it. But you said he wants to wait till the 21st to have an event at his high school, and that's what's caused him to decide to wait till the 21st. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, and Courtney Hawkins was at his school yesterday, and I would expect another in-home visit with Mel Tucker before his decision. I can't confirm that, but that's just something that would make sense from a strategic standpoint for Michigan State. So give it a week or so and let the post-visit high wear off, and then they'll have probably send more coaches out to meet with him again.
All right, I've got a question here in the comments area from Jay Hender 123, and he says, "Is there any word on David Stone?" And I think he's talking about he's the 2024 kid, right, from at IMG out of Oklahoma. Initially, I think he's a 2024. Yeah, he's a 2024. Now he visited Michigan State, back in October, and Michigan State is in really well with the people that train him, including By Job and some of those guys. But he took an unofficial visit to Michigan State in October. Alabama just offered, I think today, So, I mean, Michigan State's has got an inside track with him. He's a 2024 big-timer, IMG Academy, Bradenton, Florida. Alabama offer today. That's the type of player he is, a national top 100, top 50, maybe better. One of the top defensive tackles in the country. You hearing anything new about him? I know he's just a junior, 2024, but I've got a question here. Any thoughts on Michigan State? They're off to a good start with that guy, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, Michigan State's in a great spot with David Stone. So is Oklahoma. And this Alabama offer, I could definitely see him shaking things up a little bit there. He was really excited to receive the Alabama offer, of course. But he's been very open in admitting that Oklahoma and Michigan State have been his leader at some point in time, and he views both schools very highly. I think that if anyone were to ask him, he's pretty straight up in saying that those are his top two. It might depend on the day which one's the leader for him. Coming out of the Michigan State visit, I think that they took a big lead, and then he visited Oklahoma, and things swung back towards Oklahoma's favor, and that's probably going to continue to happen throughout his recruitment. There was talk of a December decision. If he did, I think it would definitely be Michigan State or Oklahoma. But this Alabama offer, I could see pushing things back. I could see him wanting to go take a visit down there, and then if he enjoys it, having more confusion between the three. So it's not a recruitment that I think ends anytime soon. But if it were to, those three schools are not going to stop recruiting him still. So that's something to keep an eye on, even if he does have an early commitment to any school.
It's going to go for a while. Keith, here's another one. Keith Tunstall asks, any information about Samson? He's talking about Samson Okunlola. He's from Thayer Academy in Brockton, Massachusetts. He's ranked the number 16 player in the country in the On3 consensus. Offensive lineman, 6'5", 305. Took an official visit to Michigan State back in June. Also, official visit to Alabama in June. Official visit to Miami in June. Unofficial visit to Miami November 5th. I know Michigan State plans to see him next week. Offensive line coach Chris Kapilovic is going to go see Samson Okunlola next week. The follow-ups, he's visited Michigan State, and Michigan State has been in the pack with him for quite a while. There was a time when the Miami Hurricanes were perceived as the big leader. Maybe that's tapered off a little bit. Have you spoken with him a little bit lately? What kind of vibe is going on with Samson Okunlola, who legitimately is like the number 3 offensive tackle prospect in the country?
With Samson Okunlola, I think most any recruiting writer that has had to deal with his recruitment has known that he's an extremely hard person to get in touch with and get real information from. I have gotten in touch with Samson Okunlola in the past. The last time I did was in November, and he told me that he was considering another visit to Michigan State. That has yet to happen, and he plans on having his national letter of intent in on the early signing period, and then announcing on January 1st at an American game, I believe. So time is running out for Michigan State to get him back on campus. They're going to have his cousin out of the transfer portal on campus this weekend. He's a tight end from Norfolk State. Mm-hmm. Maybe they can have a last chance effort to get Samson Okunlola on campus with him. Mm-hmm. And you never know, maybe they don't need another visit from him to secure his commitment, but it's going to be tough. I think Miami has always been the perceived favorite, and that was probably who I would put my money on today. Alabama is definitely involved in there. I think they're sneakily a favorite to land Okunlola. I think it's going to be tough for Michigan State, but Kapilovic's working hard behind the scenes. So that's another recruitment where Michigan State obviously feels they have a chance if they're still keeping themselves involved. And as long as they're staying involved, it's something to keep an eye on. But I do think it'll be hard. I think it'll be hard for Michigan State to get that one.
And they're working. I mean, Kapilovic has never stopped working with Okunlola. And, bringing in the cousin of his, that's an interesting play. The cousin's name is Ademola Falaye. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I apologize.
And I have compared
Mm-hmm.
in the past to Keontae Goodwin, where Michigan State was always involved and Kentucky was the longtime favorite. I mean, he was committed there forever, but Michigan State was always involved and always mentioned, and it came right down to the wire for Goodwin and Kentucky and Michigan State. Obviously, he chose Kentucky, and that could be what happens with Okunlola and Miami. But I compared those two recruitments in the summer, and I feel like they're still comparable at this point.
All right. Michigan State bringing in 3 wide receivers last weekend. Michigan State's in good shape for Johnson, Isaiah Johnson from Richmond, Virginia. Michigan State with no wide receiver commitments in the class thus far this year, if I'm not mistaken. Last year, Michigan State had 3 receivers. Finished on signing day with Jeremy Bernard from Henderson, Nevada. He was a 4-star guy who was committed to Washington for a long time, flipped to Michigan State at the end. And that was a big one for Michigan State to get Jeremy Bernard. And he got on the field a little bit this year, made a big play on opening night against Western Michigan, I think it was. Didn't play as much as the season went along, but people can see the talent from Jeremy Bernard. Michigan State also brought in last year Antonio Gates Jr. and Jaron Glover. Jaron Glover played a little bit here and there this season. Antonio Gates Jr. did not get on the field. But Antonio Gates Jr. did travel. He was on the travel squad, the team that went to Penn State, final game of the year. So Michigan State, 3 receivers last year, 0 so far this year. Michigan State, 3 wide receiver visitors last weekend. Jason, what's your sense? Is there room for 1 wide receiver in this class, or maybe more than 1? What's going on at receiver, if you have any inside knowledge, or if you were to hazard a guess on that one?
I think they will definitely take a high school receiver and possibly 2. And then Michigan State has been linked to Oregon wide receiver transfer Dante Thornton. We haven't been able to confirm if he has any visits set up yet, but Michigan State was linked to him early when he first entered the portal. So Michigan State may look to add a high school player and a portal wide receiver at that position. If they elect to go the high school route, I could see them taking 2. If they go the portal route, I could see them taking a high school guy and a portal guy. Maybe they just decide to take 1, but they'll have the options after these official visits. If they play their cards right to land, I think at least 1 or 2 of the kids that visited over the weekend.
What'd you say about Jalen Smith? Where else is he planning to visit? The kid from Houston?
He'll be at Minnesota this weekend, and then PJ Fleck visited him last night.
All right, that's interesting. All right, so coming in this coming week, visitors, there's, you mentioned the tight end from Norfolk State. He's in the transfer portal. Samson Okunlola's cousin, Ademola Falaye, 6'7", 230. The cousin angle, I got to tell you, that looks to me like that's a chip that Michigan State's playing to try to sweeten the pot to get a shot at Okunlola. I watched Falaye last night, went back and watched Norfolk State against Marshall, and he's a tight end that has a lot of developing to do. Reminds me of Cam Allen a little bit. But it wouldn't be the first time that schools have tried to sweeten up the pot with one recruit by going after another. I can tell you years and years and years ago when Michigan State was recruiting Charles Rogers for a long time, for more than 2 years, Michigan State brought in some guys that were close to him from Saginaw. A couple of them turned out to be productive players. But guys like Jeremiah McLaurin, Monquez Wedlow, I'm not sure Michigan State would have taken either of those if they hadn't been real close with Charles Rogers. They got those 2 first, and then they ended up getting Rogers at the end as well. Go all the way back to the Flintstones. When Michigan State was going after Mateen Cleaves, that's still the biggest recruitment I've ever seen at Michigan State. And it was harsh. Izzo hadn't really gotten established yet. Michigan was still, coming off the Fab 5 stuff and all their shenanigans that were going on. Rollover accident, really crazy times. In the meantime, of course, Michigan State went out and got Morris Peterson and Antonio Smith the year before. He was close with them, but he was also close with a guy named Anthony Mull, who was a junior college guy that came in and was a kind of a bit player, didn't have much of a career at Michigan State, but Michigan State, I don't think, would have gone after Anthony Mull if he hadn't been close to Cleves. So these things have happened in the past, and I think it's smart for Michigan State to play that when they needed help at tight end. Filet, in my opinion, has a long way to go at tight end. He's pretty quick off the line of scrimmage. I didn't really get a chance to see him, at the top of his routes and his hands and so forth, because Norfolk State was really having trouble on offense against Marshall. They were punting pretty much all the time, so I didn't get to see him do much with the ball. I'd have to go look at some more highlights. As a blocker, he has a long way to go, but interesting play by Michigan State to throw that chip in there to sweeten the pot a little bit with Okunlola. Is that the way you see it too? Is that your thought, or just hard to say?
Yeah, I think so. And his other offers since entering the portal have been Buffalo, UNC Charlotte, Miami, Ohio, Robert Morris, and Morgan State. So, I mean, I think there's kind of a theme there. But with Michigan State offering, I think that it increases their chances with Okunlola. I mean, like I said earlier, maybe it's a last chance to get him on campus one more time. They scheduled a visit with his cousin real fast, and maybe they can get Okunlola to join them. I think there's definitely a strategic aspect to that, and I think it was a smart move.
All right, so coming in this weekend, you've got Okunlola's cousin at tight end for the portal from Norfolk State. By the way, if you're at Norfolk State and you go into the portal, sometimes you have an idea of who's going to offer you. The MAC level teams, Buffalo, Miami of Ohio, to me, I think that's kind of his level. But, if you're starting at Norfolk State, I wouldn't be real eager to go into the portal and leave a starting situation at Norfolk State unless I really, really, really knew that I was good enough to go into the MAC level or higher. And out east, Norfolk State and some of those schools, even some of the FCS schools are perceived as being on par with Division I FBS schools like MAC teams. So if I were him, I would have thought that I would have been hesitant to make that move unless you knew you had a good chance to get a scholarship offer to a place like Michigan State. So who knows what was going on there. Michigan State, have they offered? I don't think they've offered, have they?
Oh, yes, they actually
They did? Okay.
Yep.
There you go. So we'll see. All right, so visiting this weekend also a couple of running backs. Last week, 3 receivers. Those receivers come in. Michigan State might only have room for 1. They look at each other. That can help someone like Isaiah Johnson make a decision, which could help Michigan State maybe not recruit the other 2 as hard if they think they've already got him. I don't know. This weekend, Michigan State with, I think, 2 running backs coming in as of now. You got Jalen Barberin, and both of them are sleepers. We're seeing Michigan State getting involved with a lot of late blooming sleepers, which is not always a great sign. But like I said earlier, the fact that Michigan State is not just recruiting out of a book, as some have charged in the past, the evaluation part is a big part of this. If you're a Michigan State program that cannot recruit right now with the nuclear powers like Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson previously, in Oklahoma some years, and Michigan has not recruited great over the last few years, but they put together a really good team. They've done it with toughness and a team attitude. You look at some of the teams that played well last weekend and championship weekend, Kansas State, Utah. That's a type of team, that's a type of style Michigan State, when they've done well with Mark D'Antonio over the years, they've done it like Utah and Kansas State. Evaluation, player development, trusting that process, bringing along veteran players. It looks good for Michigan State to go out and have that kind of ambition to go and get 4 stars all over the country. But at some point, as you're growing, you're going to hit your head on that ceiling. If Michigan State had gone 10-2 again this year, Mel Tucker's star would have continued to risen, and maybe they would have gotten some of those. But when you have a season like this, you have to go back to doing some of the things Michigan State has always done for better or worse, and you better evaluate well. And that's what Michigan State's trying to do right now, and I think the Johnson kid represents that. The Barberin kid, running back, 5'9", 180, Simi Valley, California, Chaminade High School. Little guy, really good speed. If you watched Kansas State against TCU, by the way, TCU's in that category also, evaluation, player development. You saw the little running back for Kansas State, Deuce Vaughn. This guy, Jalen Barberin, is kind of that guy, that type of guy. Berger's a guy that runs behind his pads a little bit. He's got some physicality. I'm sure Michigan State would like to get a banger, all-around talent. But it seems like Michigan State is also interested in having a contrast of running backs. Berger and Broussard, theoretically, we're going to be a contrast type of guy. If you're bringing someone like Barber in, he can be a contrast little back. He's got good speed like Deuce Vaughn. Reminds me of DeAndre Cobb a little bit. People that remember Michigan State back in 2004, DeAndre Cobb had electric acceleration and speed. I'm not sure Barber has that much speed. I know he has some really good track times that are eye-popping, but when I watch him on film, I'm not sure I see DeAndre Cobb's speed. Maybe he could develop into that. I'm not sure, but Jalen Barber, 5'9", 180, Simi Valley, California, late bloomer. Jason, what isn't there like a real good track time with him? 100 meters. Didn't he run? What did he run? I think if I'm not mistaken, didn't he put up a really good time in the 100 meters?
I think like a 10.37.
And that's flying for a little guy. That is absolutely flying. I would wonder if that was wind aided. I think he's got good speed. I'm not sure he's got 10.3 speed. But the book on this guy is he's a little dude that can really run. What are you hearing about him? And he's a guy that Michigan State, they're getting in on him, but it's small schools involved with him also, right? Like San Jose State and those type of teams.
Yeah, until Michigan State offered in October, and then just a couple days after Washington State offered, and that's mainly the big competition right now. He took an official visit to Washington State over the weekend. After Noah Strunger reported that Ephraim Reed was in California to visit with Barbarian yesterday. So I think Washington State is mainly the only other school really linked with him, but Michigan State likes Barbarian a lot. I think they see him as a guy that they can pair with another running back well. Same with other visitor coming in, Walter Samuel, who's committed to Tulane. Both are more speed backs, and I think that Barbarian and Samuel would both, Michigan State views them as pairing with another back well, like Reese Cano. I don't think they would take both of the running backs that'll be on campus this weekend, but I think they would take one of them and pair them with either a portal back or Cedric Reese Cano. There hasn't been much of other running backs linked to Michigan State at this point. They had offered a couple at the beginning of December, end of November, but communication with each of those has faded other than Barbarian and Samuel. So it'll be interesting to see which of the two Michigan State seems to prioritize harder, or if they get either one of them. And then I think they'll try to pair one of them, like I said, with Reese Cano or a portal back.
They seem to be putting a lot of eggs in that Reese Cano basket again. If they don't get him, will they go ahead and take Barber in, or do they think they can prize Walter Samuel loose? Doesn't seem like there's a lot of others that are falling in line there, which is interesting. Walter Samuel, running back, he's out of Louisiana, 6 feet 200, 3-star, ranked number 57 in the state of Louisiana. He's committed to Tulane. Am I right about that?
Yes.
And, Tulane's had a really good season based on evaluation and so forth. In-state guy they hope to hold on to. So Barberin and Samuel, one from California, one from Louisiana, they'll be visiting this weekend. Meanwhile, Mel Tucker is going to be visiting Reese Cano down in Texas here in the days ahead. So running back recruiting is interesting. Back at the last evaluation period, I think Mel Tucker and maybe another assistant coach, they went and visited Darius Taylor at Walled Lake Western High School, 5'11", 190. He's committed to Minnesota. Nothing more came of that. Am I right about that? Still committed to the Gophers. No other signs of that breaking loose?
Yeah, not that we've been able to detect, no.
All right, so this weekend you've got coming in Jalen Barber, running back from California, Walter Samuel, running back from Louisiana, the tight end from Norfolk State from the transfer portal. That's Okunlula's cousin. And also the big one, defensive tackle. Texas A&M entered the portal surprisingly yesterday. And a former top 50 recruit nationally, big-timer who was committed to Ohio State, then decommitted, ended up with A&M, redshirted in 2021, played this year, started as a redshirt freshman for 2 games, became injured in game number 2. I watched, maybe the first half of A&M's game against Appalachian State. And into the third quarter, I looked at the defensive reps, and I saw him out there playing right defensive end for the most part. Listed at 290 pounds. He's a well-proportioned 290, There's no bad weight on him. It's a strong 290, and he's playing defensive end. I know when he was being recruited, he preferred to be a defensive end. Now, Michigan State has some needs at defensive tackle or defensive end, but could use some depth at defensive tackle. The guy's name, Tunmise Aduleye, defensive tackle, coming in from A&M. Aduleye, big one for Michigan State. Your thoughts about Michigan State getting a visit from him? Probably the number one defensive lineman in the transfer portal in the country right now. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and Michigan State seems to made big strides early. As many saw that we posted on the message board last night, as we've been keeping tabs of the coaches on the road, that Mel Tucker and defensive line coach Marco Coleman were in Katy, Texas. And now that we have more context clues, it seems to be a safe guess that they were visiting Adelaide, so that's his hometown, either him or maybe his high school, talked to some of his high school coaches. I would say it's a safe guess that they did some sort of research into Adelaide yesterday and locked up a visit really fast. A poster on our message board found a great video of Brandon Jordan training Adelaide, and it was actually in his commitment video to Texas A&M. So there's that Brandon Jordan connection. Mel Tucker and Marco Coleman were in the area yesterday, and I think that leads to why Michigan State was the first visit for him. And I'm sure Michigan State will try to lock things down as soon as possible. Tonight he reported offers from Miami and USC, so he's going to be a highly sought-after prospect for sure. He already had an offer from TCU reported on his Twitter. So the offers are going to keep coming, but it's a great sign for Michigan State to get the first at-bat. Hopefully for them, they're going to try to lock him down early. With the Brandon Jordan connection, that's something to monitor.
All right. So Adelaide, big one for Michigan State if they can reel him in, originally from Katy, Texas. The Brandon Jordan piece is a big part of this. Brandon Jordan worked with him when he was a younger recruit before Michigan State hired him. So that's got to be a big reason why Michigan State was able to get a foot in the door to bring him to visit East Lansing and presumably have a half-step lead on the competition to bring in this defensive lineman from Texas A&M out of the portal. Brandon Jordan, that's got to be Michigan State's in with this guy from A&M in the portal. Got to be, right?
Yeah, definitely. And Jordan's connections with a lot of the Texas guys could come to benefit Michigan State later on in the portal, just with having trained so many of them guys before being connected with Michigan State. He's got former clients at schools across the country, so this might not be the first time you see something like this where a guy enters the portal and quickly sets something up with Michigan State. And just while we're on that topic, another thing that I just wanted to mention, just while we're talking about it, when Mel Tucker visited David Hicks yesterday, I think Michigan State obviously has the Brandon Jordan connection in that recruitment, and they're going to try their hardest to do whatever they can to sign him. But I think some of these visits that you might see while being in the area visiting other prospects could be a strategic move for down the line too, where if a player were to enter the portal later on, just the relationship still being there. Sometimes finishing second place for a recruit isn't very fun as a recruiting follower, but a couple of years down the line, maybe a couple of losing seasons with that program or not enough playing time or an injury, that recruits back available. And I think that sometimes coaches are recruiting for that possibility even while their kids are still in high school.
All right, I got to say, Michigan State had a lot of recruiting momentum January, February, March, and into the summer, and a lot of 4-stars and 5-stars visiting. It's tapered off. Michigan State's class number 21 in the country by on3.com. I'm really not expecting Michigan State to hold on to a top 25 class because the players they're going after aren't going to move the needle in that direction. But they've got a chance to, like someone like Isaiah Johnson, who's not ranked real high. I think he's a 4-star guy. That would be big if they could get him. And what's going on in the portal, if they can get this kid from A&M, that would be a big step. Reese Cano, or anything at running back is important. Dante Moore would tip the scales way back toward being in the top 20 if they can flip him from Oregon. So there's still a chance they can make a lot of damage. They're out there working hard at it. We'll see what they can do. Jason, before we let you go, any other thoughts that you want to touch on that we haven't mentioned?
Just one thing while we were listing up some of the players that they have coming down the stretch. I think one guy that even I sometimes overlook, but is a big time target for Michigan State, and Michigan State went to visit him yesterday, is Ashton Porter. He's ranked by the 294 overall on the on-3 consensus. He's a 4-star, and he's out of Cypress, Texas. Michigan State saw him yesterday, and Oregon saw him on Friday in home. Those are definitely the two biggest contenders for him. He was one time committed to Northwestern. He was committed there for a long time and then took an official visit to Michigan State and decommitted from Northwestern. And it looked like Michigan State had all the momentum there until he got offered by Oregon and went and visited Oregon. And then Oregon seemed to match that momentum. So that's an interesting recruitment. Mel Tucker and Marco Coleman were there yesterday. They went out to dinner and they had an in-home visit. He's going to decide at the Army All-American game in January, and Michigan State's put in the full court press on him. And he also is a Brandon Jordan client, former Brandon Jordan client. He worked with Brandon Jordan in middle school, so Michigan State has that connection there too.
And was Auburn involved with him also?
No.
Okay.
TCU and Oregon are the main competition, but mainly Oregon.
All right. Question from Keith Tunstall says, are a lot of schools trying to flip Stanton Ramil? He's the big-time offensive tackle from Alabaster, Alabama. I think he's excellent. Like I said earlier, I was watching his the second half of their state championship game, and he looks like a mature 20-year-old college kid right now. And Michigan State did real well to get a commitment from him when they did. But back then, you know, he took an official visit to Tennessee and some other huge programs. That's before Tennessee had the season that they had. But Ramil is ranked in the on-3 consensus, ranked number 227 in the country. 4-star, national top 250, number 17 offensive tackle. Going all the way down to Alabama to get him. You know, Auburn has a coaching change. I would imagine that Auburn could be going after him. I've not detected anything in that regard. Tennessee, I don't know if Tennessee's moved on, but Tennessee's got a powerful recruiting machine when they want to put it to work. Have you heard anything about other schools trying to close in on Stanton Ramil, a Michigan State commitment?
Yeah, all that buzz is very real. Auburn has been pushing really hard. Tennessee's been pushing hard. Even throughout their really successful season, they've been pushing. Penn State's been pushing. But I think after that in-home visit the other day with Mel Tucker and Chris Kapilvik, I'm sure many Michigan State fans that are listening to this saw the pictures after that. It was quite the showing. And Mel Tucker and Chris Kapilvik seem to have done a good job of securing his commitment once again. I think he's locked in and reaffirmed. I think Michigan State survived the initial wave there. I mean, there's still a couple more weeks to go, so things could change. But as of now, I think he's back to fully committed and back to the same feelings he had when he first made his commitment.
It's amazing Michigan State went down there. They've never recruited much in the state of Alabama, especially 4-stars down there. Chris Kapilvik did a great job to get in on him, get the lead, get a commitment. Because at the time of the commitment, he had taken an official visit to Tennessee, and Tennessee looked strong. So it was great recruiting by Michigan State at the outset, but to fend off these others, Tennessee, Auburn, it's going to be very difficult. And Chris Kapilvik, I can say, he's going to be visiting with Stanton Ramil tomorrow, Wednesday. And you're right, you know, the photos that came from Mel Tucker's in-home visit a couple of days ago, that was the most elaborate in-home visit I've ever seen in the Twitter era when we have photos of official visits. That didn't look like, to me, someone that was wavering when they put on a spread like that for Mel Tucker to visit. That looked like a good sign. You would agree?
Yeah, and I think it's pretty safe to say Michigan State almost had to secure his commitment twice. I mean, he never decommitted, and he didn't really show any signs of wavering, but the way the other schools had been coming after him, Michigan State had to match that and keep recruiting him as if he was uncommitted. And I think that they, in a way, secured his commitment again with that visit. And, yeah, I agree. That was probably the most elaborate in-home visit I've ever seen, too.
It's a good sign for Michigan State. By the way, Stanton Ramil, he visited Michigan State unofficially way back in October of 2021 for the Michigan State game. So he saw the big Michigan State game in East Lansing, Michigan State's huge victory that weekend, and that obviously had a big impression on him. So Michigan State will continue to try to fend everyone off, Auburn and Tennessee, to get big-time offensive tackle, national top 250 guy from Alabaster, Alabama. Keep an eye on that one. Go ahead.
Another quick note along the same lines, by Job. Michigan State has Mel Tucker in home with By Job tonight, and I think that things have already calmed down a little bit there with the threat of Oklahoma pushing for him and flipping him. But I think that Michigan State survived that wave, and Mel Tucker's doing an in-home visit there tonight, so that will only go up a longer way in securing his commitment come signing day. But I think that things are looking good with By Job as well.
All right, so before we let you go, everybody's asking me about Dante Moore, the big-time quarterback for Detroit King. Your thoughts on that one? Everybody has opinions on it. And I don't think anyone really knows for sure. What are your thoughts on Dante Moore? He's committed to Oregon right now. Top 20 player in the country, consensus. Dante Moore, your thoughts?
Yeah, he's still committed to Oregon, and I think everyone knows Michigan State's got work to do if they were going to flip him by signing day. Things have worked their way, as everyone knows. Everyone's followed the story with Kenny Dillingham leaving for Arizona State. That was a domino that helped Michigan State, who's been trying to get their foot in the door. Sources have told us that Michigan State and Dante Moore have been receptive, or Dante Moore has been receptive to Michigan State, willing to talk to them. Michigan State's going to go down to Detroit King this week. We haven't been able to confirm the exact date yet. But, of course, Michigan State has commitment Jonathan Slack at King, but they're going to talk to Dante Moore as well. But, yeah, that's all that we can really say as of now. Like you said, nobody truly knows exactly what's going on there. All we know is Michigan State's pushing. They're going to try to see what they can do. And Moore's been receptive. There's been little clues that we've been able to pick up on with him taking his Oregon stuff off of his Instagram, but then reposting it. So I think everyone's tuned into every little move in this recruitment, and we'll see if it turns out to be anything or if he just signs his international letter of intent with Oregon and it was all for nothing.
Yeah, he committed to Oregon and then had the Oregon stuff on his social media, as all commitments do. He took that down about 2 weeks ago, and that's usually a big deal. It's not it's subtle thing, but it's kind of a big deal. And then when he was playing in the state championship, he was asked about it in interviews, and he said something along the lines of, well, we'll just have to wait and see what my future holds, which was not a huge ringing endorsement for his commitment to Oregon. A week earlier, he was asked about it, and he said, yeah, he's still 100% locked into Oregon. But he didn't say it with a lot of conviction. Those of us that have been following recruiting for a number of years, sometimes you have to look for poker faces and body language and things like that. So it was shortly after he said, I'm locked in with Oregon, but without a lot of conviction. Then a few days later, took the things down, his Oregon things down from his social media, and then said those things after winning the state championship, that whatever the future may hold. But then got the in-home visit in Detroit with Lanning, the head coach at Oregon, and a photo was posted from there. I think they were at Campus Martius downtown Detroit, and Lanning was all excited, and they were given the O or whatever, and Dante Moore was given the O also, but Moore tweeted it out, but the look on Moore's face was, it was body language wise, who knows? I mean, people can look into it, but then he put the Oregon stuff back on social media. I don't mean to disrespect Dante Moore at all. So if he's watching this, I apologize that we're looking into your body language and things like this, but we're only doing that because he's an immensely talented guy. I've said all along that he's the most talented high school quarterback I've ever seen in the state of Michigan. And he's got a lot of maturity about him, too. I think he conducts himself really well. So I think he's going to do well wherever he goes. But it's sure fun to watch what's going on with this whole thing. And you can understand a Detroiter, does he really want to go all the way out to the West Coast to play for Oregon? I realize Oregon has a lot to offer, a lot of bells and whistles. Michigan State's trying to present a lot of bells and whistles to him also. A chance to play right away at Oregon. At Michigan State, it's going to be an open competition. They've already said that. Seton Thorne, Caton Hauser, Noah Kim. Can Dante Moore get in there and get involved with it and make a run at it? I think he has that type of talent to be someone that can start as a true freshman. It's rare. Now, Tua Tagovailoa did it at Alabama, getting into the starting lineup late in his freshman year. We've seen some others. Justin Fields, no, he was at Georgia, then he transferred out. Some of Trevor Lawrence did it. I mean, the great ones can do it. And then some other guys that are ranked and supposed to be great, it doesn't happen as quickly or at all. So there's no sure things, but I think arm talent, zip, quick release, he's got the brain to process. Very impressive guy. So it's worth watching, and Michigan State is not going to quit. We can agree about that, right, Jason?
Yep.
And it's an important one for Mel Tucker right now after last season. They want to get it rolling again. If they got Dante Moore, that would change some things on the field in the near future and also be a great sign for the program. That's an important recruit, not only for Mel Tucker, but for Jay Johnson as well. All right, Jason, we're going to let you go. I really appreciate you coming on the show and spending so much time with us and the work you do at SpartanMag. Appreciate it. We will talk to you later. Everybody go to SpartanMag. Check out Jason's fine work. Follow him on Twitter also. What are you at Twitter? At On3? What, Kill Up On 3? What is it?
Yeah, Kill Up On 3.
Kill Up On 3. Hut. Sounds good. Sounds like a play. Sounds like cadence at the line of scrimmage. Appreciate it. Jason, thank you. You take care. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And thank you for everyone who came over.
All right. There goes Jason Killip. Let's go over here in the comments area and rattle off some of these questions, comments, criticisms. All right, Spartan MD says, good luck to the move to On3. Cop, appreciate that. Go over to On3. Everybody get in line. Maggers, we need the Maggers getting over there. Desert Spartan 1 says, good evening from sunny. Well, maybe not so much today, but usually sunny Chandler, Arizona. Thank you, Desert Spartan. Thomas Kohlberg says, more excited for National Signing Day than Christmas, says Thomas Kohlberg. Well, I hope you have all your National Signing Day shopping done. Less than 2 weeks. How many? What do we have here? 7, 14, 15. Only 15 shopping days until National Signing Day. So make sure you're going out there and checking your lists. Spartan MD, greetings from wonderful West Bloomfield. Smash the like button. Thank you, Spartan MD. Hit the like button. Noah Sprunger is our intern extraordinaire. Says he's got a link right there. Subscribe to Spartan Mag. It's just $1. And you can subscribe and you'll have Spartan Mag all through August 31st. $1 for how many months is that? 7, 8 months? All the way to the beginning of next football season. $1, 7 or 8 months. What is it? What do we have? December? That's 9 months, ladies and gentlemen. I just used my abacus here to count up how many months that is. 9 months. $1, 9 months, Spartan Mag. Access for 9 months. Thanks to Noah Sprunger for providing that link. I'm not that great of a pitch man. I should have mentioned that earlier. $1, 9 months, Spartan Mag. Go create your habit over there. You'll be happy you did. Bruce Cameron Jr. says, what's the overall mood of the football program? I hope it's pissed. Bruce is just telling it like he feels it. I respect that. You hope it's pissed? I'll tell you that it is pissed. And that's about the strongest language that I usually like to use here at Spartan Mag Live. It's a family show. Now, 20 years ago, family show meant you didn't even use words like that. These days, man, there's F-bombs and S-bombs and B-bombs all over the podcasts and social media, even from people from esteemed news networks that I'm not going to mention because I'll mention a news network and people will say, well, I don't like that news network or newspaper. But I'm a little old school on that stuff. I don't always have the greatest language away from the microphone, but in front of the microphone, I think it's kind of juvenile to use bad language. Now, I'll sometimes I will drop some bad language if I'm really perturbed about something, and usually I'll do it in a measured manner, and I will give you usually about a 10-second warning before I drop one of those letters and words, but not tonight. Gordon Sonona says, what do you think about Neon Dion going to Colorado? I think Neon Dion does not like to be called Neon Dion. He prefers Coach Prime. I don't know. You know, he did well at Was it Jackson State? I don't even remember, but I think he went like 25-6 there. He's got a lot of energy. He's a smart guy. Proved there. He's got good organizational skills. He's got something there. So, he's going to create some recruiting buzz. He'll get some players there. Colorado's needed an infusion of excitement for a long time. I don't know. I don't have a lot to compare it to in terms of a former player that achieved that kind of fame and what he did at the lower levels, and now he gets a job at Colorado, which is not a nuclear power. I mean, has that been done before? And especially not with someone with that kind of charisma. I don't know. I'd have to think. That's new ground. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. He's good for... I don't know. It's going to be interesting for sure. I don't have a good bead on where that one's going to go. He's going to get players. He's shown he can organize. He's got organizational skills. It's probably going to go pretty well. Tim Hughes says go green from Traverse City. Matt Latham says go green. It's great to have Matt Latham over taking part over at the new SpartanMag over at On3 as well. Matt Latham has overseen the MUN message board at SpartanMag for a long time. We don't have the hockey board anymore. We've put the hockey conversations there at the Underground Bunker message board. And we think that's going to pass hockey conversation in front of the eyes of Michigan State football fans, and probably will do more to promote the hockey program that way. Michigan State with a couple of near sellouts last weekend against Minnesota. Minnesota came in after a loss somewhere. They were number 1 in the country. They lost to somebody, and they came in ticked off. Michigan State played well for about 2 periods in the first game, but Minnesota was just too good in a lot of ways. Michigan State this weekend's playing home and home with Michigan. Michigan very talented. I think they lost to Wisconsin last week, the last place team in the Big Ten. Michigan did, but Michigan supremely talented. Michigan State, can they drop that losing streak and remain one of the surprise teams in the country, if not the surprise team in the country? Michigan State hockey, they're back in terms of some of the interest and the buzz and the excitement level. They're not back top to bottom, talent top to bottom, but they've done a good job putting that roster together with some interesting evaluation. That top line, you've got Jagger Joshua, tough guy, senior. Then you've got a couple of freshmen, Dorwart and Daniel Russell, a couple of freshmen that played juniors together last year. Russell's dad was Kerry Russell, played at Michigan State. Dorwart, kind of a late bloomer. To get both of those, Russell was one thing, but Dorwart, that's great evaluation. You see that in all sports. Evaluation, those 2 freshmen on the top line doing some good things. It's fun to watch Michigan State hockey. Again, we'll see what happens this weekend. Chucky Houston says, you think there'll be any announcement soon regarding the offensive coordinator or some personnel changes? Go green. No, in terms of coaching changes, I would not expect anything until after signing day. There's no reason to change anything right now. You've done a lot of work in recruiting. There's no reason to bring anyone off the tracks right now. Keith Tunstall asked about Samson and Stone. We asked about that before. Bruce Cameron telling me I was trying to think of Jordan Addison. Thank you. Desert Spartan 1 says, so many open questions heading into next season, not the least of which is at the quarterback position. What should our realistic expectations be for the 2023 Michigan State football season, and not just wins and losses? Whew, that's a big question. We're going to be talking about that exact question pretty much every podcast from now until September 1st. And what am I doing right now? You're going to keep chopping. That's what they're going to do. So there are so many questions, and we'll get to those questions as we get toward winter football, find out who's on the roster, who's coming back, who's coming in from the portal, spring practice, those type of things. Chucky Houston says, anything less than 8 wins is unacceptable. Chucky Houston, serious about it. Gordon Tonona says, Stanton's quarterback is an 8th grader. Unbelievable. Great arm. First 8th grader to start in a 7A state championship game as a quarterback. That makes sense because I was flipping through it, and I saw that guy, and he looks young. That's for sure. I didn't know he's an 8th grader. In the state of Alabama, obviously 8th graders can play varsity football. You may remember Joshua Langford, Michigan State. Pretty good basketball player, had some injury problems. He was like All-State for 5 years, Player of the Year in Alabama. But Joshua Langford played as an 8th grader in Alabama. Jack says, go green, baby. Love On 3 setup, Jim. Thanks, Jack. On 3, we got a question over here about that. Who was the question? Let me see if I can find it. Thought I'd find it quicker than this. Okay, it's question number 10 over there in the, what are we calling it? The mailbag area from SpartanMag with over the Underground Bunker message board. Question number 10, MSUDC from Parts Unknown says, is this a real SpartanMag Live, or are you changing platforms again? How about a rundown on the new site? He's talking about the new site, On 3. We used to be Rivals.com. Now we're at On 3. Got great respect for Rivals.com still. But On 3, it's a newer site. Just was established, I don't know, a year and a half ago. It's very modern, a lot of bells and whistles, and they've got their ear to the ground on a lot of things in terms of growth. And SpartanMag, we really enjoyed our time at Rivals.com for a long time. We just think to really expand our growth, it was the move to make. And we're excited about it. And the people that run On 3, Shannon Terry, he's the guy that helped establish the original Rivals.com. He was part of that group that sold Rivals.com to Yahoo, and then later on he established 24/7. He's part of that group that sold 24/7 to CBS. Sat out a year, and now he's doing his third network, On 3. He is, I don't know, he's the Tom Brady of these fan sites, whatever you want to call it, college football first, college sports first websites. And his third time around, he's building an even better mousetrap, and we were invited to be a part of it. And we decided to go with it, so we're excited with it. It's something that was in the making for more than a year, and we couldn't tell people ahead of time that we were moving out of respect to Rivals.com and contractual reasons. So all of a sudden at midnight after the Michigan State-Notre Dame game, boom, it changed, and the Michigan State site at Rivals.com looked different, and a lot of people were confused. I apologize about that, but there were some people at the message board that knew it was going on. We had to delete those. When they found out that it was happening, we had to delete those. But hopefully Spartan Maggers have found us over there at the new site, and we hope that you appreciate the work that we're doing over there. And the Underground Bunker is really, it's been really busy since we made the move. I mean, there's been a lot of activity there, and it's happened with no football games going on and no commitments going on and a couple of basketball losses. But even with, kind of dead information time of year or a week of the year, still, I mean, Underground Bunker message board is really taken off in the last few days. So go over there, check it out. Become a Spartan Magger. $1. You can subscribe for $1. You'll have it all the way until through August 31st. Let's go back over here to the comments area as we wrap up tonight's Spartan Mag. Mr. Bowman says, thank God the Wings beat Tampa Bay. I didn't know that. They're taking on Cooper, and Blashill is over there, assistant coach for Tampa Bay now, right? The former Red Wings coach. I heard he said it was going to be awkward to go against the Wings today. So Red Wings, I'll tell you what, they worked their tails off. Got respect for the Red Wings too. Clark Marier says, I'm rolling with Marier with this group because it sounds fancier. But I think it's Clark Marier. But we call him Clark Marier. Jack says, the more the merrier. Chuck Houston says, some of them players have been in the transfer portal 4 or 5 times. It should be a rule in a place where they can only go in here one per every 4-year college career. That tends to get ridiculous or something like that. But Chuck Houston's telling it like it is. And I respect that. Jack says, Thorne is still our quarterback next year, in my opinion. That's what Jack says. Mr. Bowman says, Comp, you can't say there is no K9 because we did not know K9 would be that great. It's true. It's a good point. Gordon Sonota says Penn State has 2 freshman running backs. That's true. That's got to hurt a little bit with Kedrick Riscano as they try to get in with him. Chucky Houston says Penn State is number 2 in Big Ten recruiting. Alex James says Michigan State had receivers galore this year and didn't utilize them. Yeah, Jaden Reed was hurt there for a while. That hurt. Trey Mosley made some plays here and there. Keon Coleman came along as the season went along, for sure. And I expect Keon Coleman to be even a little bit better next year. Because I think back to, like, Plaxico Burress had all kinds of talent, of course. Had to sit out 1 year as a Prop 42. As a sophomore, made an impact. Then I remember him going out the Oregon game in 1998 when Michigan State lost to Oregon like 48-14 or something like that. And Plaxico really got jammed up and really thrown off his routes. And he said a week or two later that he learned a lot, that he had a lot to learn after getting shut down against Oregon. So he had a pretty good sophomore year. The next year, Plaxico came back in 1999, had a great year, became a first-round draft choice. But he learned that he had more to go. Keon Coleman is a student of the game. Peyton Thorne had some interesting comments about Keon Coleman 2 weeks ago when he revealed that Keon Coleman sometimes will contact defensive backs that he has played against to ask them for self-scouting information. As in, hey, how did you guys try to go about stopping us? What did you try to do? What did you see on film? What did you think our weaknesses were? How did you go about trying to stop us? Of course, he asks players for teams that are not going to be playing Michigan State next year, because sometimes that scouting report carries on to the next year. So Keon Coleman is a student of the game, looking into those angles and avenues. Keon Coleman was good this year. I'd expect him to be even better next year. But you're right, Michigan State had 3 pretty good receivers this year. They tried to use them. Michigan State was always kind of hot and cold with that stuff, weren't they? Running game sometimes wasn't a good factor. Sometimes you get behind by so much because the defense is putting you behind in the scoreboard. Pass protection was pretty good for most of the year. It fogged out a little bit against Penn State. I know they were kind of upset with, some of the fundamentals getting a little leaky with Brandon Baldwin. And he gave up 1 sack on one occasion, second quarter. Running back Jalen Berger gave up a sack on a linebacker blitz pickup, but that linebacker had a lot of space and a two-way go. That was a tough one for Berger, but it was not an offensive lineman. But wide receivers overall, I think Michigan State was number 8 in the Big Ten in passing yardage. Not great, not terrible. Peyton Thorne had some ups and downs, but it's debatable whether they didn't use the receivers enough. They certainly tried to. J.J. McKay, 6Man1, says, come on, guys, let's give Comp some likes. Appreciate that. Ghosty47 says, Dante Moore still a shot? Yes, Michigan State still has a shot. Ghosty47 says, think all our portal guys are defensive linemen, right? Well, there's 3 defensive linemen a couple days ago. Jarek Broussard is a running back today. Kicker, Jack Stone. Terry Lockett, wide receiver from a couple of months ago. Gordon Sonota says, is it either or either? I don't know. I say either. But I'm not sure about that either. Doors Fan 91 says, Auburn offered Andre Carter from Western Michigan. Interesting. Andre Carter in the portal from Western. Doors Fan 91 says that's the defensive end that Michigan State should look at. That guy's from Detroit too, right? I'm sure they've looked at him. They've made a decision on him. They've not offered, from what I've seen. I don't know if they're following him or not. Mr. Bowman says, I heard State was not even recruiting quarterback from Warren D. LaSalle. Brady Dragos. He says, I really liked him. I thought State should go after him after Fickle left for Cincinnati. On 3 has Dragos from Warren D. LaSalle ranked ahead of Dante Moore. I don't agree with that. But I've not really studied Dragos. I saw some of the highlights from a state championship game. And I was like, okay, yeah, he does show some things. He's got some arm strength. It's a little bit of a long release. He really muscles into it. You'd prefer someone to just bam, have zip just like right now. He kind of really has a long release, which is not ideal. And for that by itself, I wouldn't have many quarterbacks ever ahead of Dante Moore as a prospect. But Dragos, hey, I don't disagree. And now with the Cincinnati thing shaking loose, that would not be a bad play to just send out a couple of feelers as the Dante Moore thing continues to go along. Does Wisconsin go ahead and go after Dragos? Good questions. Good point, Mr. Boneman. I don't disagree, but I don't think that's happening that I've detected. Keith Tunstall asked, are other schools trying to flip Stanton Ramil? Yes, they are. Jason Killip spoke about that a minute ago. Tennessee's still working him. Auburn is working with the new coaches. Gordon Sonona says, I thought the same thing. Bad move going after Edmondson. I don't disagree with that either, Gordon. Michigan State was running really strong with Dante Moore, and they took the commitment from Edmondson like last January or February. And the Dante Moore people were surprised by that. Oregon was not even yet involved with Dante Moore at that point. And the Dante Moore people were surprised by that. And Mel Tucker was running strong with Dante Moore. I was kind of surprised Mel Tucker would go ahead and take that commitment. Michigan State thought they'd get one commitment, continue to go after Dante Moore, but Dante Moore, they weren't really having that. Michigan State fell out of that one. Bo Edmondson ended up having a bad senior year in high school. And Michigan State pulled out. That became a decommitment. YT Sparty says, is Jacoby Windman done at Michigan State? No. Benny, and we mentioned this on a couple of articles at SpartanMag earlier today. We detected some chatter that Jacoby Windman might not be done at Michigan State, might come back. I thought it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to leave. I don't know for sure that he's coming back, but it's not a done deal that he's leaving, which would be good news for Michigan State if you're bringing him back as a middle linebacker. It would help a lot. And yeah, he'll do some pass rushing on third downs as well, but I think he's primarily a middle linebacker. And they don't really have another middle linebacker in the program. Yeah, Cal Halliday can play some weak side linebacker, but he's not like a Mike linebacker thumper type. Brule is a guy that can do he's versatile. He can play some weak inside linebacker, and he can play off the edge a little bit. But Brule is not a between the tackles thumper type middle linebacker. And you need those thumper type middle linebackers when you play Michigan. Now, this year, when you needed that against Minnesota and Wisconsin and Illinois, but I off the top of my head, I don't even know if Michigan State plays Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois next year. But in the Big Ten, you need an old-school thumper middle linebacker. And Windman can do that. He can do other things, too, but he can give you some thumping. I'm not sure Windman is a guy that would want to thump for 12 games, as you would have to do in 1987. But against 2 or 3 or 4 interior running style teams, Windman can give you that. That'd be a big deal if Michigan State could hold on to him. Is there a chance Michigan State's running, doing some NIL deals to him to entice him to stay? I would hope so. But a lot of that stuff goes on behind the scenes, and it's hard to verify any of that stuff. But I would hope so. YT Sparty says, Jim, what do you think of all of our defensive linemen moving to the portal? Well, Michigan State benefited from some pretty good depth at defensive tackle this year and defensive end, because they had a lot of attrition. It's not ideal to lose guys that are talented like Jalen Hunt, Deshaun Mallory, Michael Fletcher, also to an extent. All those guys were third string, and I think all three, none of them were on the dress list. I don't think for the first road game to Washington. Third string defensive lineman didn't go. Maybe one did, but I don't think those three did. I looked for Fletcher, I didn't see him. Jalen Hunt still had some injury situations. He wasn't there. Deshaun Mallory, I didn't see him there either. But by the middle of the season, after some injuries and attrition, you had Deshaun Mallory becoming a starter at defensive end, because Michigan State had good depth inside with Jacob Slade, Maverick Hansen, Simeon Barrow. So those guys moved to defensive end because Michigan State didn't have a lot of depth at defensive end. After Chris Bogle was injured, Jeff Pietrowski was injured, and then when you had Zion Young and Brandon Wright get suspended, Michigan State all of a sudden had a shortage of defensive ends. Fletcher got on the field. He was not bad. He was not a plus, but he wasn't bad. He was functional. Deshaun Mallory, functional. Jalen Hunt, functional, especially against Illinois when they surprised Illinois with 4 starting defensive tackles, and they stopped Illinois' ground and pound. A week later against Rutgers knew that was coming, and they put Jalen Hunt in space, ran some zone reads at him, and got some chunks on the ground. That wasn't the only reason that Rutgers gave Michigan State trouble, but it was one of the reasons they rushed for a big figure. But it's good to have those guys at third string, because if you get what happened to Michigan State this year with all the injuries, you need some third stringers. Well, you're not going to have those third stringers next year. I mean, someone's going to be third string, but not guys like that have played. And that would have been really strong if you could have brought back Hunt and Mallory as third string defensive tackles with all their experience. Jalen Hunt told me that he was excited about what he did at defensive end this year because he thought it would make him a better defensive tackle next year. Jalen Hunt, we've talked about him a lot in the past. It's a guy who's, motivational pilot light, doesn't always burn the brightest. So Michigan State has been trying to bring him along as a talented guy with a lot of potential. So now he's going to go somewhere else, and for his sake, he's got to hope they're going to put as much time and care and patience into him as Michigan State did, because he's got ability. And as long as there's no injuries next year, they won't miss him. But the year after that, if Simeon Barrow and Derek Harmon, I forgot to mention Derek Harmon, if they were to leave early, which I think is possible, they could have a good enough season next year to leave early, then that would be the year after that. Jalen Hunt has another year of eligibility in 2024. That's when you would want to have him. But Jalen Hunt doesn't want to wait his turn, which I understand in today's transfer portal nature of college football. But when he moves on, for his sake, you have to hope that he's going to get as much care and patience as he got at Michigan State. He had injuries at Michigan State too, but sometimes those defensive tackles, it takes them a long time before they become something. So without those guys, there's less depth. There's less guys that have been proven on the field. So the ice is more thin now. If you're bringing the guy from A&M, that would help. He could play tackle or end. He's probably going to want to play end, but I don't know. But the fact that Michigan State may already have great indications that they're going to get him, and that might have been a factor in Michigan State encouraging one or all three of those guys to move on. I don't know. But it's interesting that those three guys would move on when the guy from A&M, Aduleye, is coming in. That's probably not a coincidence. From 10,000 feet, I kind of like Michigan State's chances with Aduleye. They were one of the first to offer, and they were the first school that he wants to visit. He's got that background with Brandon Jordan, and these three defensive linemen hit the portal. It's probably good signs that there's some chatter beneath the surface favorable to Michigan State. Salvant Bro says Hazelton needs to go, and so does Jay Johnson. Ghosty 47 says, think defensive line still got a little of really good pieces, just need that depth behind them. Yeah, defensive line, when you've got it starting a defensive tackle, Simeon Barrow is a plus defensive tackle. Derek Harmon's becoming a plus defensive tackle. Maverick Hansen is the type of backup defensive tackle that a lot of teams don't have. Those guys are solid. You're going to need a fourth one. Alex Van Sumeren is in there. He got on the field a little bit early in the season, and he looked like a teenager. He's got to add some strength. Besides that, there's nothing. You bring in the guy from A&M. He can play a little bit of both. That would help. But that's getting thin in terms of if you get a couple injuries there, like you had at defensive end this year, defensive tackle could become a problem. Then the boat don't float. And that's when you'd want Hunt and Mallory to still be around. But it looks like they're gone during the portal. Sometimes guys go to the portal and they come back. I've got no indications that could happen with any of those three. Would not shock me if one of them reeled back around, depending on what happens going forward. Defensive end, you got a lot of defensive ends coming back. Zion Young's going to be good. Keith Bogle, I thought was pretty good. Or Chris Bogle was pretty good against the run. Not a great pass rusher, but he's good and solid against the run, which is better than nothing. Zion Young, same thing. Zion Young, I think, is going to be a star. Pietrowski, we didn't even see him this year. What do you have, 5 sacks 2 years ago? So they're expecting a lot of pass rush out of him. Never got it. Maybe next year will be better. Who else you got there? Tank Brown, he's never quite got any traction. Brandon Wright, does he come back? Not sure. Anyway, Salvon Bruce says Simba is going to Iowa. Talking about Chase Carter, I did not know that. That's interesting. Guy from Minneapolis going to Iowa. Okay. That was interesting that he jumped into the portal, got on the field for one game in September. He was on the travel team late in the season. And like I wrote yesterday, if there was ever a time that a true freshman had a chance to get immediate playing time, it would have been this year at Michigan State with all the problems they had with attrition at defensive end. And even with all that attrition, Carter did not get on the field. I heard there might have been an injury situation. We didn't see him in midseason. That probably had something to do with it. Goes to Iowa. Good for him. Gordon Zanona says the pictures were impressive. Lots of family love. He's talking about Stanton Ramil's in-home visit with Mel Tucker last night. Big Will says Michigan State should go after Jim Leonard. Jim Leonard, defense coordinator at Wisconsin. I thought the scuttlebutt was that Fickell's going to keep him at Wisconsin. Fickell's also bringing Mike Tressel with him for a role to be determined. So it doesn't sound like Tressel's going to be the coordinator. Sounds like Leonard's going to be the coordinator. But Leonard at Michigan State, that'd be interesting. He's had some good years. They were number one defense in the country 2 years ago. Not so good this year. They had as much trouble with Ohio State as anyone else did, except Michigan. Once again, thanks to Noah Sprunger with a link there to subscribe to Spartan Mag. $1 till August 31st. Salvon Bro says we need to talk about getting a new defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator. Salvon Bro says we need to reach out to Charlie Strong. Every coordinator, if they coordinate long enough, they'll have up years and down years. Charlie Strong's had some down years. Some up years too. Florida. Head coach at Louisville. Head coach at Texas, not so great. I don't even know where he is now. But these days, I tell you what, if you're a great coordinator 15 years ago, it's a different game now. So what worked back then, if you have not been in the game, getting back into it could be a harrowing experience. Case in point, Bo Pelini, when he went back to LSU for Orgeron. Pelini was a good defensive coordinator at Nebraska. Then he was head coach at Nebraska. Then he was head coach at a small school. Or was it Youngstown, right? And then Orgeron brought him in to save his job at LSU, and it was a disaster. So just because you're a good coordinator 10 years ago does not mean you can be a good one now. So Salvon Bro, I respect that you came up with a name, because a lot of people just want to fire coaches and they don't really have an idea of who they want to put in there. But you came up with a name which I respect. Ghosty47 says not popular, but I think Hazelton had a promising year compared to Johnson. I would agree with that. You know, the way they turned things around the Wisconsin game. And they played pretty good defense for a while against a very good Michigan team. And then you know, when you start 27 different players on defense, and for them to rally and play well against Illinois, that was good. But then the engine just kind of rusted out against Rutgers, and then Indiana was just horrible. But if you make a field goal against Indiana, but still you're just giving up. What was Kendall Brooks, who I thought had a good season. You know, even he was making mistakes in the Indiana game. He hadn't made mistakes all year, but he made a crucial one for a touchdown in that game. And then, you know, Khalil Majid was in there, who didn't start, but he would have been the 28th starter. I mean, he was in there as the dime package and blew a call, touchdown, supposed to rotate to the middle for a cover 3, did not. And that's when Xavier Henderson threw a fit. Because you had a guy out there, I mentioned Khalil Majid, a lot of respect for him, doing everything he can as a walk-on. It's a redshirt freshman that had not played football since 10th grade. Had not played football since 10th grade. 11th grade, he was injured. 12th grade was COVID. The next year, he redshirted at Michigan State. This year, he's a redshirt freshman at Michigan State. Walk-on, 3rd string, 4th string, all the injuries. He's on the field. Communication error, touchdown in a key situation against Indiana during Indiana's comeback. I think it was during the Indiana comeback. Is that Scotty Hazelton's fault? Should Scotty Hazelton have not called that defense knowing that he was on the field? I don't know, because you can't telegraph everything. Michigan State had, you can't be so predictable. You have to be able to change things up. Michigan State was too predictable against Minnesota and did not change anything at pre-snap. That's why it was so easy for Minnesota to saw through them. And Minnesota put up big numbers, blowout. That game, throw it out the window, because that's not who Michigan State was on defense. It's who they had to be on that day. So I agree with you. It was a juggling act for Hazelton all year. Will I be repeating that all spring and all winter? Maybe. I'll have to wait and see if Michigan State makes any changes. Rob South says Jim Leonard just announced he's officially leaving Wisconsin after the bowl game. We got a call, right? Rob South says. Yeah. You know, Hazelton had some success at Kansas State, but Leonard has had more at Minnesota or at Wisconsin. Had a shot there as interim head coach. Didn't work out. It's my understanding that last summer, Jim Leonard could have taken the coordinator job for the Green Bay Packers. So there might be NFL teams that go after him as well. But Rob, I don't doubt that. Might be worth a phone call, and that would be interesting. And Hazelton knows it. He knew that this was a big year for him. They had some bad luck. If you're on an option year, you can't afford to have bad luck. That's the way it goes sometimes. Salvon Bro says, I don't want Jim Leonard, I want Charlie Strong. Ghosty47 says, I don't believe our scheme changed much outside of the Washington and Minnesota game when we did nothing. Schemes, no, I mean, Michigan State was changing coverages and so forth. I mean, you know, they played a 4-3 against Wisconsin. That was a major schematic change that day. out of necessity against Illinois. They played 4 defensive tackles. That's a personnel change. I mean, you had changes like Xavier Henderson playing some safety, some nickel, and some linebacker, and that was phased in later in the year. So, no, you're wrong. The scheme did change. I mean, some people look at a scheme and just, are you a 4-3 or a 3-4 or a 3-3? There's more to an 11-man defensive scheme than how many people have a hand in the dirt up front. But Michigan State was rolling coverages and doing different things. In the Maryland game, actually, they were doing more different things. Not always with success. I'm not saying it was great, but to say they didn't change their schemes is not quite accurate. Gary Dietrich Jr. says, not a popular opinion, but I feel Hazelton deserves one more year. 25-plus defensive starters is hard to overcome. Credit to Gary for having that knowledge, bringing it with him. I respect that. Gordon Tonona says, I would not call him. Talking about Strong. And Salvon Bro says, yeah, of course you wouldn't call him. Salvon Bro's doubling down and saying, say Hazelton needs to go. Gordon Tonona says, Leonard has more upside. Salvon Bro says, yeah, okay. Gordon Tonona says, I agree. Hazelton and Barnett had 3 years of sample size. I've seen enough. Doors Fan 91 says, Leonard will be a head coach sooner than later. Strong won't be a head coach hire anytime soon. All right, I'm going to get out of that conversation. Tim Hughes says Minnesota, Iowa, and Nebraska next year. Okay, that would explain why Keon Coleman would talk to players from Illinois. Else? I don't know if guys from Rutgers or Indiana would talk to him. He's got to play him again next year. Minnesota, Iowa, and Nebraska. Minnesota again. Okay, good luck with that. Iowa, they're doing well in the transfer portal for the first time ever. Defense was good last year. I think that's at Iowa, right? That's going to be difficult. Nebraska, just in time for a new head coach and the bump that they're with Matt Rule. They'll be well organized. They'll be improved. Mike Muscari says, I think Tucker was going to make coaching changes if he was going to make them, he would have made them by now. It's a good point, but sometimes with recruiting, you write it out. Did I say Alex Van Summer? I said Ben Van Summer, my bad. Thanks, YT Sparty. Ghosty47 says, how's the offensive line looking? Brandon Baldwin took a little bit of a step backward against a very good pass rush against Penn State, but Baldwin I thought was pretty good at the end of the year. I thought he was just as good as Jarrett Horst, probably. Vandermark looked pretty good. Samac, I thought Samac was third string, third team All Big Ten, deservedly so. He had a real good game against Indiana. I like Samac. He'll be coming back. Duplain will be coming back. I think offensive line will be solid. Salvon Bro says Charlie Strong is on Mario Cristobal's team, and he's co-defensive coordinator at Miami. And he's getting players and studs. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Majin Drop says, with all the injuries and the players who were suspended, what do you think their record would be? Mark Jacobs says, I've seen enough of Scotty Hazelton and Barnett, too. Time to make changes, Tucker. They have had their chance, and I'm sick of not having a D. That's what Mark Jacobs says. Gary Dietrich Jr. says, so are we just letting the special teams coordinator off the hook? Dude is trash, and there are 3 phases to the game. Salient point by Gary Dietrich. Evan Wilson says, so do we have hope for Reese Cano? Yes, Michigan State is still in there. They've smoothed over some questions, and Ephraim Reed was supposed to meet with him today. I assume he did. I think Tucker's going to be meeting him in the days ahead. So Michigan State's in there. Ole Miss is in there also. We talked about that earlier with Jason Killip, but Michigan State is getting some decent feedback there, but when you're recruiting down south, it's never over. I think that's about it. We're going to wrap it up. Appreciate all the questions today. Some of these I didn't get to over in the mag, in the mailbag area. Maybe next week we'll get to it. Appreciate all the likes and supports we're getting. Appreciate everybody going over to Spartan Mag, becoming a Magger. If you haven't already, $1. That'll take you all the way through August 31st. $1, you get 9 months of access. You will like it. Appreciate all the questions here. Appreciate Jason Killip. Appreciate all our friends over at Spartan Mag. And we will see you next time. Michigan State's got a big basketball game this week. We didn't talk basketball at all. And Michigan State basketball's in a tough spot right now. They're going to be fine. They'll probably lose to Penn State, which has already happened by the time you've seen this, most people. Then they'll get some rest. Then they'll get some players back. And as long as they become fully healthy, they'll be good when the Big Ten season resumes. But right now, they're running on fumes against teams that are more prepared than they are and more rested than they are. Now they're on the road doing it. It's not going to go well. But there's light at the end of the tunnel there. But they could be 5-5 by the end of this week. Go to Spartan Mag, become a Magger. We'd appreciate it. Appreciate all the support. We'll see you next time. Check us out over at Spartan Mag. Good night, everybody.